So brilliant, a huge welcome and massive thank you to everyone that's joined our launch event today. There's probably going to be people joining as we go through this, but that's absolutely fine. But it's a double celebration in that we celebrate World Quality Week 2 along with our SIG launch. Can't quite believe the numbers and support for our first event. There's 350 people registered. So we actually started with 300 allocation and we extended it just before the weekend by another 50. And by this morning when I checked it, it was a sellout. So we as a committee are absolutely extremely grateful for your support. So just a couple of requests, please, if it's okay. We have started recording the event. That's for the benefit of our CQI members. So the video will be uploaded to the CQI members area on the website just a few weeks after this event is finished. Can I just ask that we all mute and turn our videos off? This is just to save bandwidth, please. We will have the opportunity for questions in the Q&A section a little later on, and we will be monitoring the chat. So feel free to use the chat to ask questions throughout the presentations today. Any questions that we don't get around to answering live in the session today, we will strive to get back to you formally after the event via email. We will make the slides available after the event, and if there's any requests for CPD certificates, these can be arranged at request as well. So a little bit of history. We formed the SIG back in the Audit SIG, shall I say, back in May 2021. My name's William Rankin. I'm a fellow of the CQI and RSA, and I've been involved with Audit for about 17 years now, and was delighted to be appointed the interim chair, supported by the awesome Jenny Clark, our interim vice chair, and a wider team of 28 active volunteers from all around the world. So that's including Nigeria, Ghana, Japan, India, UK, Europe, and beyond. And you're going to meet 4 of these awesome volunteers today. We started this journey collectively, kind of setting out and forming our initial objectives, and that included engaging with our membership and friends across the audit community to listen and get feedback to what people wanted when it comes to the topic of audit. And Jenny's going to be discussing, sharing some of that feedback today. So a little bit of here and now. So we've been formed for 6 months. So we've been doing a lot of preparation work. There's been a lot of workshops with our committee. We've established the committee. We've kind of baselined our initial objectives, and that includes listening to our members and engaging with our friends, as I said, across the audit community. And we're really excited to be here and finally meet and start engaging with everyone. This will be the first of many different forms of engagement as we position this SIG to be front and center with all things audit. So it's intended as a committee to work and collaborate with our friends and partners across many different entities, whether it's other CQI SIGs, certification bodies, UCAS, IRCA, and even other auditing institutions. We will and want to offer a platform to coach, influence, and be that kind of trusted entity that our friends and partners can rely upon for audit. And today that kind of journey formally begins. So we launch our SIG today with a very poignant topic, a spotlight on remote auditing. So today you're going to get an insight from the engagement survey we conducted back in August from Jenny in a second. And we're extremely proud and delighted that 4 of our committee members who you'll meet today will be taking you through a personal lens of their experiences with remote auditing and kind of sharing some of that lessons and key takeaways from a variety of industries across the globe. So sit back. We hope you enjoy the event. I'm going to pass over to Jenny now.
Thank you, Billy. Hello and welcome to World Quality Week. My name's Jenny Clark and I'm the Interim Vice Chair of the SIG. My contribution to this webinar is to present an overview of the outcome of our recent survey. The survey was launched on the 29th of July and ran through August using an online platform to seek views and responses to 8 specific questions. The questions were developed by the committee and were designed to provide us with an overview of the audit community we would be engaging with. We're very grateful to Caroline and the rest of the team at the CQI for their work in analysing the responses, but also to everyone who contributed. Your responses have helped us gain insight. Over 70% of respondents came from within the CQI and IRCA membership, but it was good to see 29% of responses coming from outside the bounds of these 2 organisations, and it showed that our outreach via social media was working well. In order to understand the spread of the respondents, we asked participants to indicate which roles they undertake within the field of audit, recognising that respondents may undertake a number of roles. As can be seen, the majority of respondents operated as auditors, undertaking first and second party audits. The range of responses has been very encouraging and adds weight to the overall validity of our survey and its data. We moved on to consider aspects of audit and presented 4 options, asking participants to put them in order of importance. At 48%, compliance and conformance scored the highest, but risk management and meeting customer requirements scored 18% and 20% respectively. With the focus of the standards being so much around the PDCA cycle and the drive for continual improvement, it was rather surprising that this was the lowest scoring role of audit, and the committee are looking at this being a future theme of some work. Whilst conformity might have featured high on the list of roles of audit, it scored lowest when we turned the question to considering the value audit brings to an organisation. Reputational enhancement and continual improvement were the big hitters here. It's almost a complete reversal of the data on the role of audit. The attributes displayed by effective auditors was explored in this question. Training received considerably less votes than experience, knowledge and soft skills, attributes which are not the focus of current training schemes in many cases. The responses received show that this is an area which offers a scope for future work, and this data will be used to drive forward work associated with the development of training to meet the needs of the current and future world, and to ensure that auditors, in whatever field they work in, are able to deliver value-added input at all levels. We need to future-proof to ensure that auditors are able to deliver an appropriate service to the customers they work with, and to do so in an ever-changing world. In this question, we used a ranking system to establish views on the importance of the auditor having experience in the field that they were auditing. That blend of knowledge and learning, which ISO 19011 seeks to drive in. The mean score here was 3.72. And now the final slide and the lead into our webinar. Remote audit has been the theme of our research and debate since we formed as a SIG in May, and it's something which is clearly going to be with us on a long-term basis. When we issued the survey, remote audit had been a reality for just over 12 months. Time flies. Use of remote auditing techniques are likely to be deployed in a range of audits for the future. We've proved it can be done, and it's opened the door for it to continue. For the SIG, this set of data shows just how much we've learned and how much we've still to learn. Just 2% of participants preferred remote audit, with 62% still preferring the traditional approach of on-site. So let's now see what our learning over the last 2 years has shown us through the eyes of our presenters. Thank you.
So I'm going to introduce our first presenter today. It's Emma. Thank you, Emma.
Hi all, my name's Emma Windsor. I'm the audit manager for Devonport Royal Dockyard, where we essentially MOT and service warships and submarines for the Royal Navy. Next slide, please. So when COVID hit, one huge consideration when it came to stalling our audit programme and remote auditing was the security restrictions that we have at the dockyard. We're unable to audit remotely using camera and drone technology, which I know a lot of places can use. There are restrictions around external auditing. So with what we share with our audit bodies, we had to reconsider and review, which included implementing SALs, which are security aspect letters. We're currently going through the process of implementing those security requirements so that we can share higher security levels of information using Microsoft Teams or Skype. And also when it came to COVID testing requirements, that meant access controls within the docksides due to the certain testing that we needed. So these were all things that we had to think about when we were reviewing our remote audit guidance. Next slide, please. So how are we auditing now? So currently we are using a mix of remote and on-site auditing. So it's very much dependent on the topic areas and security restrictions that we have. Predominantly, we're auditing ISO 9001, the quality management system requirements, which means we can do reviewing processes and documentation via Microsoft Teams. However, there are various other standards that we are looking at, which include 1445,001, 17025 and 44,001. Apologies about the sun blaring in my face there. So if we're doing, for example, looking at painting on a warship or submarine, we have to physically go on site to review that action being undertaken. So it does very much depend on what the topic area is, and that's something that I manage within the programme. During 2021 internal audit programme, when lockdown actually hit, we did completely pause the programme for around 3 to 4 months before we then realised actually this is how we need to work now. So although the majority of the audits were remote during the lockdown period, we have switched to more of a hybrid approach. All future audit programs will remain hybrid, so we will essentially work from home and go in when needed. We implemented a guide for remote auditing for auditors and auditees to utilise when lockdown hit. We used guidance based on UCAS, so we pulled together a 2-sheet document, and it just provides a bit of comfort on what to expect for both the auditor and the auditee, which really helped when we had to switch our approach. I've just included an image there just for our internal audit programme for this year. So we have around 160 audits on there at present, and with the yellow line being the programme and the green line being the progress, you can see that actually we've got great success with the hybrid approach that we're taking. Audits are being undertaken almost on time. With regard, I think there's 6 audits there that were overdue, but really successful audit rates using this hybrid approach. Next slide, please. Things that we've learnt with this remote auditing that we've been undertaking. So the positives: minimise travel time. Although we only audit on the dockyard is a few miles long, and although we have an internal bus route, travelling to different areas on the dockyard is very time consuming, which you have to plan in around your audits. So we've minimised that. It's easier to plan logistically doing audits remotely, safer and quicker. So there are the pros there. Cons: it can take longer overall, and in regards to that, that's relating to gaining documentation post-audit can be a lot more difficult than when you're there face to face. There are technical glitches that can stop flow of an audit, and you're unable to read body language as well when you're auditing remotely, especially if someone doesn't have their camera on. And it is more difficult to build up that rapport that you would normally build up face to face. We have, however, learned to be more flexible and adapt. We've learned to be more patient when auditing, and we've also learned that realistically it's a safe and practical way of doing it. One other thing that was noted during the remote audit experience is the amount of NCRs and issues being raised off the back of an audit, albeit they're around the same sort of numbers. We're raising the same sorts of issues. However, it is taking longer to close out those issues. So that is something that we are finding a challenge and that we do need to review. And that's because we can't physically go and see someone and sit with them and see how they're getting on with their corrective actions. So that is something that we will need to work on moving forward. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Emma. That's absolutely brilliant. We're now going to move on to our next presenter, which is Razul.
Yeah, thank you, William. Good day and good evening, everybody. My name is Rasool Ayvazi. I am a project quality lead for international projects in oil and gas and energy sector. I'm residing in Japan, and I'm working in headquarters of an international Japanese company located in Yokohama City. And from the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, I have been involved with remote auditing. Without further ado, let's get started. Pros and cons of remote audit. Well, first I would like to share with you the results of a survey by IIOC. As we see here, before COVID-19, in 2019, only 2% of audits were conducted remotely. Here, we have responding to COVID-19 pandemic. It jumped from 2% to 38%. Is a next donut next to this one. William is going to show you. All right, very well. As you see, remote audit is 38%. We go and start for pros, advantages of remote auditing. First of all, low travel time and cost. Annual travel costs in 2019 was $1,300 billion, and in 2020 it dropped to $500 billion. Around 62% we had reduction. Of course, obviously, this is because of COVID-19. And in online or remote, there is business travel is nothing, is zero, and there is contribution to lower CO2 emission. This next one, secondly, we have higher health and safety. Well, annual worksite injuries and incidents are 2.8 million. This is data for 2019. And quality management system auditors are dealing with business that those business are operating with high-risk machines, chemicals, processes that is like high risk. And this risk for auditors is slow down the audit. But in the online and remote audit is reducing time and energy commitment to put into safety. And then less strain on businesses and the organizations and less stress on auditors. This is the benefit. And the third one, auditors prefer it. Report for ISO and others survey on remote auditing and assessment and evaluation is down 2021, July, August. This is I think these are the results of the Jenny just explained to us. I'm just referring to some part of that. Remote and mixed audit is supported by 79% of auditors. By next click, we will see the donut chart. I'm showing this information. As you see here, remote and mixed audit are 79% is supported by auditors. Auditors prefer to that. By next slide, I'm going to show you the disadvantages of remote audit. Low quality communication. This is the first thing. Lack of reading the air. This is a Japanese translation. This is a translation from a Japanese word. In Japanese, there is a phrase, kuki o yomu. It means reading the air. It means literally reading the signals and those information coming from surrounding and other people. Receiving those non-verbal signals from the environment and understanding the atmosphere. Body language and facial expressions are two of them. This is not limited. There are voice and any other things. Well, this is missing, and especially in countries like Japan and other high context cultures, this is important. I have learned this kind of reading the air or kuki or yomiru, this beautiful thing by living, and I learned these words and actions by living in Japan. Next is technical issues, audit video quality problems. Well, always we are familiar with technical issues, always there are this kind of things. For preventing these things, we have some ideas, some ways to prevent. William, can you show the, okay, all right, preventive tips are choosing the best possible of information communication technology. Just we are going to refer from now on ICT, and well, training members to the best of the use of ICT, and for a good start and flawless start of the audit, some days before the real audit, trying a dry run audit video, audio video meeting, it is really helpful. Creating plans and strategies before the audit meeting, it is another thing, is preventing this kind of cons. Next is data clarity. Simply putting in simple words, data can be manipulated. The PDF files can be manipulated and such and such. Preventive tips is again, good ICT and good role of data security mechanism will help a lot. Instead of using static data, using live video and good camera and streaming the data is safer. And the third one is lack of auditor's autonomy, audit ownership. Remote audits removes some freedom, ownership, pride of auditor, and remove some fluidity and directing of the auditing process. We know that auditors, they just autonomously, they are deciding and changing the direction, but there is no such as freedom here. And for prevention tip here is, again, having a good ICT and information technology tools is going to compensate in some parts. And the second one, building a trust and good relation for ensuring the transparency. By next slide, I'm going to have a takeaway. And number one I want to share with you is, well, when COVID-19 goes away, for successful auditing, remote auditing is going to stay with us and stay with business and organization. And with the correct information technology system and ICT and good strategies and procedures, business are going to benefit and to add the auditing ecosystem. Second one that I want to share with you here, remote auditing delivers result and are flexible and sustainable ways toward forwards. Training for auditors already started and commenced, and businesses created cultures for remote auditing. They already started and they are very familiar with that. Next one is for winning the future of remote auditing. These are 2 points is recommended to organization to equip themselves with the mix of advanced ICT, advanced information technology tools, and forward thinking of tech culture. This is the important one. After the having the best ICT, keep pace with new technology. Well, remote auditing or on-site auditing, there's the point, and here I want to say that savvy and high-performance business will continue to benefit both remote and on-site. And mixed auditing will create more robust and audit-friendly strategies. Next slide is going to show the last takeaway that I'm going to share with you. All right. Yes. Based on our understanding from the results of surveys and my learning brings me to this brief that we expect a figure for total current year 2021 would be for remote and mixed auditing, same as the auditor's preference. It was 79% as per the survey result for July to August. We expect by the next donut, I'm going to show here, we expect for 2022, trends could be a jump of around 10%, and become 90% of remote and mixed auditing. Well, this is all I wanted to share with you. And next slide is only references. I wanted to, this is for my gratitude and my appreciation, and credit goes to the references I used, I read and learned from them. And the last one is my LinkedIn here. If you want to know more about me, you can visit my LinkedIn. And if you have questions, you can send me a message. And if you have some other pros and cons about audit, remote audit, and you can share with me. I will love to hear from you. Thank you. This is for me, and back to William. Thank you.
Thank you, Razul. That was fantastic. I'm now going to introduce Chikodi.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Audit SIG inaugural webinar edition. I am Chikodi Emerson, a member of the group. I'll be speaking on remote audit from a supplier's perspective based in Nigeria. I am a member of the CQI and Audit Special Interest Group and currently the MD of Hands Off based in Nigeria. If you wish to know more about me, please go to my LinkedIn page. Thank you. In the past 2 years, we have seen organizations undergo so many changes. These include COVID-19 lockdowns that led to working from home, loss of jobs, financial crisis, human capital shortages for low and high income jobs, protests such as the BLM Black Lives Matter and the NSAS movement, rapid innovations such as COVID-19 vaccines, and so on. It is clear to say that the world we know has changed, and change being inevitable, we have to adapt or be left behind. Therefore, we would presume that adopting remote auditing would pave the way forward for most businesses in Africa, particularly Nigeria. However, this is not the case. I would refer you back to the CQI Audit SIG survey on remote audit conducted in August 2021. Let's imagine for a second, if I was a small business-sized owner, why would I choose to use remote audit rather than on-site audit? I would choose remote audit based on certain factors peculiar to Nigeria, such as it's cheaper compared to on-site audit. I could meet from any location of my choice, my office or home, if it provides the requirements for the audit. It saves time. I do not have to wake up by 5 a.m. to make it to the office to receive the audit team. By so doing, I'll be avoiding traffic common here in Lagos. Also, I'll be compelled to learn and invest in technology. For instance, how many of us partook in webinars or knew of Zoom or Eventbrite before the pandemic? You would even have access to key personnel of the company, no matter the location, without disrupting operations the whole day because of an audit were it to be on site. So you see, remote auditing is not all bad. Imagine again, if remote audit comes with such benefits, why are organizations in Africa, particularly Nigeria, not quick to adopt this process? This is because with everything in life, there are advantages and disadvantages. Therefore, the key challenges we have are power disruption, lack of 24 hours non-stop electricity, and the cost of fuel or diesel to power generators are no joke. Or you realize that you have had no power for 3 days. Your phone and laptop are dead, and you have a meeting to attend in the next 1 hour. Or you receive a message that the office won't be opening due to an NSAS movement or protest at 9 p.m. the day before, or that government has declared that day a public holiday. in commemoration of an event that happened 20 years ago. Not so funny, right? Imagine if the audit also involved your staff on a customer site. I guess it would be the right time to understand the levels of protocol in place and fear of auditors and audits. Think for a moment. If there are side effects, for example, the COVID-19 vaccines, why should I bother to change or adopt a new process, such as the remote auditing? The way forward. This would be important in the future as a result of: 1. It offers flexibility. We must be ready to adapt to change. 2. Gradually begin to adopt alternative power supply, such as solar, as in the case of Nigeria, and where applicable, hydrogen and wind. 3. Train, train, train. Simply put, we must be ready and appreciate the need to be receptive to learning, teaching others to teach ourselves. 4. Invest in new technology. Drones, the Internet of Things, 5G, machine learning. 5. Adopt alternative communication channels. For example, digital communication links, emails, WhatsApp, Zoom, Teams, Telegram, Google Meet and Chat, and so on. 6. Adopt alternative document verification, which 4. New technology and 5. Alternative communication channels come in handy. 7. Cybersecurity. Protect what you have and consider what you have as diamond. Always be ready. There is a thief lurking in the corners. Therefore, as we come to an end of this presentation, I would like you to remember, pandemics will come, disruptions will come, innovations will come, but whether you're ready or not, changes will happen. So you either get on the bandwagon or be left behind. Remote auditing is the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chikodi. Now going to hand to Tony. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Billy, and thank you, Chikodi, for that. I'd like to just start off by looking at remote auditing in the backdrop of World Quality Week, and really about the 3 Ps in terms of products, people, and obviously providing that integrity for the planet. And I suppose the first question, if I introduce myself, is I'm Tony Duff. I'm the General Manager of System Certification Services, a management system certification body based in Lisburn, which is near Belfast in Northern Ireland, UK. But and I've been involved with the CQI and auditing for about 20 years now on, and obviously CQA was the Institute for Quality Assurance before that. So in products, I think from a remote audit perspective, we can help improve the efficiency of products through the remote audit process by the accessibility to design teams and to product development teams on an ongoing basis. Oftentimes, I know when we talk about design or we talk about products or even development of services, individuals are not always based in one area due to globalization and how people collaborate, and different design teams and outsourcing and other things that go on. And I definitely think that remote auditing can have a positive effect of being able to assist in process, checking the process effectiveness of design so that products can be developed quicker and obviously take into consideration future use as well. So I definitely think there's an opportunity where remote auditing can add to that. In terms of people engagement, positive engagement, I think this is really twofold. Oftentimes, as a third-party auditor, we deal with managing representatives, managing directors, particular process owners or heads of departments. And through the remote auditing process, I think we can often speak to people that are responsible in different multi-site locations and or different departments much easier without disrupting their day job. So you can speak to somebody for 10-15 minutes if you want to, as opposed to dragging them away from their department or their supervisory responsibility. So it can be positive in terms of the remote aspect of that. And I suppose on the other side, from the auditee or the auditor team, we can draft in expertise from experts that may not be located at the auditor, or it may not be economically viable to bring them across to different countries just for a couple of hours with a specific audit objective. So I think in terms of the engagement of people, both on the auditor side and on the auditee side, it can have a positive impact. Then from the perspective of the planet and this drive towards net zero carbon, I think remote auditing, obviously, as we've heard from the previous presenters with regards to the reduction of travel and obviously the associated emissions related to that, we can have an impact on that and still have a bigger geographic reach in terms of going out to increasing sample size with less travel associated. I also think that remote auditing, desktop reviews, and auditing in total can have a bigger impact as we talk about COP26 and people looking towards green criteria. Then how can we verify that? So I think audit as a global process and remote auditing can add to that process of verifying what people are calling greenwashing. So past 26, where qualifying explanatory statements are required, we can then try to provide that integrity towards that net zero carbon whilst reducing our own carbon footprint associated with travel to audits. If we can go on to the next slide, Billy. So quite a lot of words in this one, but I was aware that this is going to be recorded and or the slides shared, so just wanted to get everything in there. But I suppose the big question when we're talking about remote auditing is, rather than people enjoying it or whether they prefer it, is it effective? And from this, I looked at the definition of effectiveness with regards to, or what an audit is with regards to ISO 19011. And the clear difference to me, or the only thing that stands out from a remote perspective, is that it changes how we obtain objective evidence. And I suppose even when I was looking through 27006 today with regards to information security, it states in D11, if anybody's interested, the best quality of audit evidence is gathered from observation by the auditor. And I suppose all we're doing is changing how we actually do that. In that, for 27006, the example given is if you want to check a locked door is locked, you go and pull the handle. And from that perspective, that's easily verified and it takes 2 seconds. To actually do that in a remote audit may be challenging. But you can see here the pros that some of our previous presenters have talked about. Emma talked about the pros and cons. The key things, I suppose, are about the improvements that remote techniques can deliver. Include, I think there's a big turn where people become more transparent with their auditors, given access to shared documentations, and making it easier for the auditors to get access to stuff. Also, from the point of view, we can increase our sample size because we don't need to physically be there all the time in multi-project or multi-site teams. We can then sample different parts of it with a certain amount of rigor without having to physically be there. So we can increase the audit scope and increase the sample size. So we are getting more effective audits because we're covering more of the activities. On the con sides, I suppose there are potential difficulties. We've talked about internet connections and communication resources and difficulties. And I also think there can be a perceived audit bias, auditee bias. So in other words, if we have a project-based organization like in construction or somebody servicing sites, it may be that when we actually try and access that information about those sites, that only certain ones are available. So it can have this Hawthorne effect of, okay, we're going to present these ones to the auditors and therefore they're going to be perfect. And sometimes what we like to do as auditors is to veer away from things and go and put our noses in things that aren't on the audit plan, but sometimes that's not easy when you're doing a remote audit. So this was just, we're looking over a number of issues, and you can see some of the benefits of ICT. We can authenticate people, we can digital stamp documents, and so that provides another level of robustness and validity that provides confidence for the end user and or the consumer. And I suppose time's a big issue in remote auditing in terms of documentation and objective evidence being available at the time it's planned for. And that can be difficult for auditors if they're trying to juggle lots of information and lots of requirements that aren't available at the time. So that can be a con. Next slide, Billy, please. A number of people have mentioned the survey by the IAF ILAC. So there's a task force in place from these organizations that are collaborating. And there was a report produced in July, and some of the issues and some of the outputs replicate our own CQI survey. But the three key outputs I find here, the key thing in a pandemic is this 86% find the benefit and the ability to keep a certification. So we have to remember from a certification point of view that remote auditing is a technique and it has to be considered on the basis of maintaining the certification. And B, you can see that 60% started right down the bottom, 60% stated that they preferred a blended audit. So people have talked about this hybrid and we would talk about blended audits. So we can have some aspects where the risk is low being fully remote and some being traditional on site. And that really depends on the audit criteria, whether it's something with operational control that we need to put our eyes onto. And the other thing I would say is that during the period of lockdown in the UK and Ireland anyway, and the audits that I've been aware of, we felt that there was a human bias being propagated in the difficult circumstances that everybody was facing in the pandemic. And so I considered post 6 months into the lockdown, I considered between April and September 2020 what the audit outcomes were and looked at the amount of non-conformities and the spread of them. And actually there was an increase in our, this may not be indicative, but it was in our data, it showed a slight increase. And so that meant, for me anyway, it suggested that there was no soft grading, and that human bias in terms of empathy or sympathy in the middle of a pandemic still resulted in outcomes with regards to improvement activities being generated for the auditees. So soft grading to me wasn't systemic. Next slide, Billy. Okay, so when we're talking about this blended approach, UCAS in June published this document, TPS 74. And really what this is talking about, well, where do we go from now? And we talked about the future. And this was published in June after a period of consultation with industry. And it is guidance, but there are task force working in the background that may then bring this to mandatory guidance as we go on, as it seems to be adopted. But the key aspect of any approach is always about risk. So from this, you can see it states in there about the risk grade of organizations. So a construction company where they work on site, physically doing work, we may need to physically be there in order to evaluate that effectively. I think Emma talked about, a painting process, then how else to do that? Documents don't show you the process, so you maybe need to physically be there. And this is a blended audit framework, and really it talks about risk, and there's a whole decision tree in there about the previous state of the management system certification from our perspective, and or access and the type of organization it is. And you can see even from that, if we go back a stage when we talk about as a certification body, our approach to risk management was assessed by UCAS, who obviously are our accreditation body. And they went through and checked our risk approach and validated that it was going to actually deliver confidence to the end user or consumer, because certification without that, it doesn't do the job. So if the risk to certification in terms of if there have been high levels of non-conformity in the past, if there are operational control criteria within the audit objective in terms of the likes of health and safety or environmental, then we might physically need to be there. And if that risk to certification is too high, then the blended approach may not be possible. But you can see in the wee table that where we have a low risk organization doing a surveillance, it could be possible that we do 50% of it in a remote technique and 50% on site. And how you do that depends on the circumstances prevailing in terms of the type of organization and if there are any pandemic restrictions, etc., then they all have to be taken into consideration. Next slide, Billy, please. And this is just my wee wrap up. Just trying to say some of the things that I've relayed to that you can have a look at. Most of these are publicly available for free. If you just Google them, you'll catch them. But really, for me, the key documents are IAF MD4, which is a mandatory document as to how we use ICT. In the past, it had said that using those types of techniques should only be 30% of the audit scope, and if you're going over and above that, you have to justify. And then you can see TPS 74 at the top there I've just talked about, and that's really about how do we conduct our blended activities. And remember that all this has to be justified and recorded by, certainly for third-party audits, we have to record it, justify it, and then review the effectiveness of it to make sure that it continues to meet the requirements of the audit objectives. I would also note at the very bottom, I think somebody was asking questions about food on the wee chat, and certainly there'll be more guidance coming out. IAF, the International Accreditation Forum, have published remote auditing activities for accredited food safety certification just in August. So there will be plenty more guidance and information coming into the public domain. For me, a blended audit, this is personal opinion, for me a blended audit is the way forward, and the blended activities in terms of the remote activities should be based on risk. So lots of stuff there that are based on documentation reviews can be done off-site. But I do think that we do enjoy, as auditors, we do enjoy getting out and meeting people and helping bring improvements within those organisations and having relationships, as much as we still need to retain our impartiality. So hopefully you've gained something from that, and I'll pass you back to Billy.
Many thanks, Tony. Thank you. So we're going to open the floor to Q&A now. So I'm going to hand to Jenny, if that's okay, to maybe pull out some questions that's been coming through the chat.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. And the first question really, I think, probably comes towards Tony. Mohammed's asked a question about ISO 22716, which is cosmetics and good manufacturing practices. And his question was around whether or not that was remote was a suitable means for delivering that. So Tony, can I hand that one to you?
Yes, I'm listening, Jenny, and I did see your initial response to some of the things on there too, and that's not a sector that our organisation covers, but in general, there is minutiae. That's why I listed all the documentation. There is minutiae with regards to this. In that there will be a decision tree, taking into consideration the guidance that I've given, taking into consideration the product certification that you're talking about in terms of those specific sector requirements, and then there'll be what are the organisational requirements, what stage in the cycle are they at, when were they last audited, was there any non-conformities, is the auditor, has the auditor that's planned to do their next audit been there before and understands their site and understands their processes. Normally for initial audits in product certification, it's very difficult to do it that way unless it is a document that they're producing. But I would suggest that they need to refer to their own CB or product certification body and the documentation that's been provided there. I'm sure I could do some follow-up and provide them with more detail as required.
Thank you. I mean, I think that the learning for all of us is that there are so many variables. You have to look at each situation and take that risk-based approach. So that I hope that's been a useful response to Mohammed, and I have said it's something that I think we will be looking at as we go forward. This is a topic that's going to be with us for a long time. The second question that came up was related to Emma's presentation. So Emma, I wondered if you could respond to this one, which was from Christian. And his question was, how does the audit programme and its progress compare with previous years? Is it better, the same, or worse than before?
So I believe it's better. We have saved so much time with this hybrid approach that actually we're able to audit more. Obviously, an audit programme is you need to take into consideration your resource as well, but the output I do think is improved. Yeah, there's not much more I can say on that, I don't think.
No, I think that's a really useful kind of take on it. I think where we might have thought that remote was going to be a poor relation to on-site audits. I think in some cases we've discovered that actually over the last year it hasn't been that poor relation, and we are actually able to kind of deliver a robust project and meet programme requirements. I'm just picking up, there's a post from Brendan who says there are advantages in ICT audits that have not been covered yet, including the ability to carry out concurrent interviews of auditees. So, for instance, a process may be conducted across several sites. We can interview the overall process owner and the local process owners together to discuss metrics, performance, risk management, definition, and so on. Saves time, but also engages these people in a way to help conform or deny their common understanding. And no one has mentioned virtual sites. With changes to organisations, we should expect to see more virtual sites or virtual teams where there is no physical site. And Brendan, yeah, very valid points. We had to choose what we were going to present this time. This is by no means the end of our kind of processing of remote audit thinking. So I think we'd like to take the points you've made and build them into our future thinking. So we'll engage with you on that at some point when we've got through today. But thank you very much indeed for that point. Alistair's just posted, you know, with the increase in working from home, access to remote workers has to be done remotely. Very valid point, you know, and I think it links back to Brendan's point that there are going to be some organisations who've decided to close down their office that we would normally go and audit at. So in those cases, you know, Tony, from the certification point of view, it's a different organisational structure. It's, you know, these are all things that I think we're still teasing out as we go forward. So that's kind of where we're up to on the questions at the moment.
Jenny, I'd just add on that one that I think there is change, and I think like when we talk about the Internet 4.0, things will change. So when the mention of virtual sites, as people have more integration and they're using SaaS more, so all their processes are online and in the cloud, and as auditors we get access to that. It may well be that, you know, the process is completely transparent in a virtual world, and it means that we actually physically don't need to be on site, especially for service aspects of low complexity delivery, you know. So I think things will change and accelerate, and probably the new auditors coming in, you can see I have a bit of grey, the new auditors coming in will be a wee bit more flexible to that, and there will be more innovations as we go. And I think that's a key thing about ICT that was mentioned, that ICT as we know it now will be different definitely in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think my concern with all of this is that the training that we give new auditors, the ones that aren't as grey as you and I, Tony, the training needs to reflect this emerging world, this world we're now in, and having training that's heavily focused on having somebody mock up doing an opening meeting perhaps lacks some relevance now. There's a lot more about actually how you validate data when you're viewing it remotely, and I think this is certainly one of the themes that Billy and I have been talking about going forward. There's a real need for the training to keep pace with the world we have moved into. And I think we had a very powerful question at one of the committee meetings, you know, would we have taken on remote auditing if it wasn't for the pandemic, or would everybody have been going, oh, it's too difficult, it'll never work? We are now in a place where it is the reality. And I think that to me is we need to keep pace with it, and we need to get training moved up to the reality that these are the audits we're delivering. We're not on site necessarily. We're not going to sit down and have a formal opening meeting or a formal closing meeting. We're going to be doing that over the airwaves.
I think, Jenny, there was a big question when this all happened to all certification bodies about when there was less travel and there was key time, you know, people could start working from home at 9 a.m. so they didn't need to travel, they were saving hours and all this sorts of stuff. There was a big question with regards to whether remote auditing can be delivered at a cheaper cost. So we say from the audit perspective, and the key aspect that people miss is that it actually takes more planning, because we have to do risk reviews in advance to justify why we're taking a certain approach. Then we have to liaise with customers well in advance, and perhaps even, as Rasul said, then we need to have a dry run beforehand to make sure it's working. Then we need to coordinate with if it's an audit team, we need to coordinate with them in advance to assure that we can all manage on the same platforms. We need to ensure the ICT of the organization is up to speed, and so there's actually it's probably a better process because everybody needs to be engaged in it, but it can take longer actually than just a standard turn up on a physical day and away you go.
Yeah. We've just had a statement or a question, you know, are we going to consider remote auditing training in lead auditor courses? And I think this is exactly the question that we're asking, and that we as an audit SIG want to take forward. I think it's a very valid point. You know, the courses as they have been for the last 17 years perhaps are not relevant now, and that's something we're taking forward.
Really, sorry, I'm going to have to wrap it up because I'm just conscious of time. We're almost approaching the end. So if there is any other questions, we are going to review them. So please put them on the chat, as I said at the beginning, and we will respond to everyone formally. I'm just conscious got a minute left. So just food for thought as we wrap things up. I love this slide from Chikodi's presentation. You know, pandemics will come, disruptions will come, innovations will come. You know, it's dealing with change, it's managing change, it's, you know, remote auditing is part of the solution, and we're going to be talking about this, as Jenny and Tony's been saying, as part of our SIG and part of our future engagement sessions with everyone. So I just want to say a massive thank you to all our presenters, massive thank you to Jenny as well for the slides and engagement survey and the Q&A. We really appreciate all the questions. The story doesn't stop here. The story continues. We will be coming back very, very soon. Expect an announcement in the near term. We hope to be back in December. So we really appreciate all your support, all your help, and we look forward to, you know, this first of many engagements with everyone. And I just finish on, have a great World Quality Week, everyone, and keep safe. Thank you. If we should close the recording, Caroline. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.